St. Thomas University Digital Journalism and New Media present.
Hello and welcome to the Basement Files. These are today's top stories. We hear from a journalist who spent over a year in an Egyptian jail and lived to tell the tale. The challenges facing craft beverage companies in a province like New Brunswick as it announces a support program for them. And with less than a week to go, we'll see what Canadians think about the U.S. presidential election. Canadian-Egyptian journalist Mohamed Fahmy has been a free man for over a year now. He spent 400 days in Cairo's infamous Scorpion prison. Fahmy now uses his story to advocate for the freedom of expression and journalists detained overseas. He came to St. Thomas University to deliver this year's Dalton Camp Lecture in Journalism. Angela Basse has the story.
Mohamed Fahmy is a former Al Jazeera journalist who was arrested along with two of his colleagues in December 2013 in Egypt for conspiring with the Muslim Brotherhood and fabricating news for Al Jazeera. Fahmy had previously covered the Iraq War in 2003 and the Arab Spring revolutions. He was finally released from prison in 2015.
حضرتك احنا دفعنا 6 اشهر المتهم بريء حتى اذا يتم ادانته احنا عملنا معامله كاننا يعني ارهابيين فعلا كاننا معانا اسلحه حضرتك المغتصب والقاتل عنده تلفزيون وبيطلع 4 ساعات ضرايب احنا محبوسين جوه حبسه يعني مش ممكن ارجوك تحكم علينا
prison. So here I am visiting.
Since his release, Fahmy has been speaking about his experience in prison and the responsibility of media and government for the reporters covering stories in conflict zones. Prior to the lecture, Fahmy met with journalism students in Kinsella Auditorium to talk about how he and his colleagues conducted exclusive interviews while imprisoned in the terrorism wing, with people from the Egyptian president's aide to a man who spent time in the caves with bin Laden.
I'm just a journalist, a messenger covering the story. I'm covering their story.
He later appeared at University of New Brunswick campus to deliver the Dalton Camp Lecture in Journalism. Fahmy has been working with Amnesty International to introduce a bill that obligates the Canadian government to intervene when a citizen is detained abroad, after he felt the government at the time of his incarceration did not realize the seriousness of the situation. He also spoke of his lawsuit against Al Jazeera for not properly documenting their citizen journalists and providing cameras to individuals who were already affiliated with a certain cause or group. Fahmy said that while governments are making it increasingly difficult for journalists to cover the stories on the conflicts in the Middle East, the use of citizen journalism should not go unchecked.
So many networks have opened and allowed citizens to participate by sending their videos or by helping to get the story out. However, having said that, I do believe it's extremely important for networks to corroborate and have a really stellar vetting of the material that comes in. And the most important aspect of it all is that you can't be allowing members of a specific faction or a group or an opposition to be involved in providing this kind of material, because right there and then it's not citizen journalism anymore.
Hadil Ibrahim is a journalism student at St. Thomas. She was born in Iraq and lived in the Middle East until 3 years ago. She said that Fahmy's lecture inspired her because she understands the thirst for freedom of speech that is not available in many countries.
It was less from a journalist perspective and more from an advocate's perspective, and I think that's, I guess, a journalist advocate, and I think that's kind of a fresh perspective that I enjoyed hearing about.
Fahmy's Dalton Camp Lecture will air on CBC Ideas on November 28th. The book on his experience in Egypt, The Marriott Cell, will be released on November 15th. His foundation is still working to make it a law for federal governments to step in and help those who are imprisoned abroad. For St. Thomas Journalism, I'm Angela Basse.
There's a hot new shop in Fredericton selling great clothes for unbeatable prices. For free, that's right, completely free, no strings attached. The shop opened in the basement of the Multicultural Center to provide clothes and other things for those who can't afford them. Will Cumming is going to take us inside and show us what it's all about.
The Community Closet offers free clothes, books, and accessories to anyone, no matter their income. The Community Closet was originally called the Career Closet, which offered suits to people with job interviews or court appearances. While the shop is open to all, it is frequented by many immigrants and refugees. Bonnie Natty, a Liberian refugee, loves the closet and all it has to offer.
Oh, it's very nice. I'm very happy, very happy. They really doing well for us. especially with the refugee. Again, we don't have money, no family, we are alone. Come here to take some things free.
The Community Closet Coordinator, Katie Haggerty, encourages everyone to come down, no matter their status.
We had a big donation last year from UNB students, which was wonderful. And I said to them, you know, guys, feel free to come. And they just, it was almost like they felt like they shouldn't. And I don't want people to feel that way.
Haggerty says there is even an environmental benefit to shopping at the closet.
There's so much stuff on our planet now that just gets tossed out. And so, you know, if you have clothing that still has life in it, bring it here and you know, it will find a home for itself for sure.
It's not getting any warmer outside, and with the way New Brunswick winters can be, everybody's going to need a coat. Now, thanks to the Community Closet, anyone can have one for free. So, if you find yourself out in the cold this winter, swing on by and they'll hook you up. With St. Thomas Journalism, I'm William Cumming.
Next week, America will decide if Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump will take the U.S. Oval Office. No other election in history has been followed as closely as this one. Our own Chris Robinson wanted to see what Canadians think of their neighbor's presidential race.
In 6 days, the American public will decide who the next president will be. Will it be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? That is a question that even most Canadians are wondering. Kaleb Drake is a student from Fredericton, New Brunswick.
I mean, Hillary Clinton I don't think is by any means a wonderful person, but I mean, in comparison, you have to pick the lesser of two evils, and she's definitely it. You're looking at her or an egotistical, sexist bigot who, like, he shouldn't even be a candidate. I don't even understand how that's possible.
Many Canadians view the U.S. election similar to Drake. 26-year-old Logan Perley of Tobic First Nation had some strong words to say about both candidates.
I think that they're both horrible. Hillary, I think, is very corrupt. I think she's just as much of a loose cannon as Trump is, especially after reading some of the Podesta WikiLeaks email.
Nova Scotia resident Nathan Spinney is confused by it all.
It's hard to speculate what's going to happen after the election, but either way, it's either going to, I don't know, screw us over real badly or not really, so.
Right.
It's just really hard to tell.
6 days is all that separates either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton taking the Oval Office. We can only hope that as their Canadian neighbors, the Americans make the right decision. For St. Thomas Journalism, I'm Chris Robinson.
Canadians may have their thoughts on the election, but many Americans already seem to be getting a say. A new poll from Reuters and IPSOS shows Clinton leads Trump by 15 percentage points among early voters. Around 19 million Americans have already voted. The poll was conducted before the FBI announced Friday it would be examining newly uncovered emails sent by one of Clinton's close advisors. It is unlikely the results of the investigation will be announced before the election next Tuesday. Craft beer, wine, and cider. These are things that many New Brunswickers enjoy. Whether after work or with a friend, there are Fredericton residents that love to relax with a nice local drink. The craft industry is a growing business model in the province. But what is it like being part of the management and marketing of these popular beverages? Troy Glover has the story.
Whether it's beer, cider, or wine, craft brewing is becoming increasingly popular. Yet there are still many challenges that brewers face when starting their business. These problems range from targeted audiences, to community support, to even where the beverage will be sold. Adam Clausen believes that the province is just figuring out the economic advantages to craft alcohol.
Whether it be purchasing the raw material, but more importantly, the ability to take a raw material, create a value-added product, and export it worldwide, not just for tourism, but to bring all of those additional revenues back into the province to grow it. They're currently working on that, but it's always good to have additional support in that area.
Last week, the New Brunswick government announced a program to try and support craft beverages. The local food and beverages strategy states that microbrewery products account for approximately 3% of the provincial beer market. New Brunswick's craft microbreweries are capable of meeting about 30% of that demand. For some, what holds them back are the taxes on the alcohol itself.
There's a lot of tax in New Brunswick on beer, and we'd like to see that go away. I believe in tax. I believe tax is a good thing for specific purposes, but we pay 5 or 6 different taxes on the beer, and it seems that they're not going to the places where they should be going.
So far, it looks as if the strategy merely outlines the success of craft beer and wine, not describing anything too technical. For brewers like Maybe, he thinks government assistance like lowering taxes could help get New Brunswick beer across the country, giving the province the chance to become the beer capital of Canada. With the new program still being within its early stages of development, it's still up in the air whether or not it's going to successfully help the craft beer and wine industry of New Brunswick either branch out to other provinces or even get to some international buyers. But one thing's for sure is that craft brewers and winers aren't going to slow down here in New Brunswick anytime soon. My name's Troy Glover with St. Thomas Journalism.
Now over to Tina Johnson with the story of a supposed haunting here in downtown Fredericton.
If you're from the area, you may have heard the story of the haunting of the Christ Church Cathedral in downtown Fredericton and the story of Mrs. Medley. It's said the ghost of Mrs. Medley glides along Church Street and enters through the west door of the cathedral to bring her husband his supper. The smell of food heavy in the air. Some even say they've heard organ music coming from the church late at night. Hank Williams, verger of the church for 15 years, tells us his experience with the ghost of Mrs. Medley.
Said that if you're in the building alone and you smell food, you might want to leave. I know in the past 6 years there have been at least two times when I have been in there and all I could smell was tomato soup. Very strong odor of tomato soup, so I have a very great respect for that story.
The second wife of the late Reverend John Medley, first Bishop of Fredericton, Margaret Medley was nurse to his first wife when she died, leaving some to wonder whether the first Mrs. Medley met with foul play at the hands of her young nurse. Whether the rumor is true, the ghostly Mrs. Medley is yet to harm anyone in her wanderings, aside from scaring them silly.
One was a teenage girl who supposedly saw Mrs. Medley's ghost, and it scared her so that she refused ever to come back to the church. And the other one was from a lady who was cleaning up after communion one night, and I think it fell to her to down the rest of the consecrated wine, and while she was doing this, supposedly Mrs. Medley's ghost came up out of the floor and then walked out the door without opening it. So we do wonder just exactly what spirits we were talking about.
While her ghost flits around the cathedral, her body rests with her husband's outside the church walls ever since her death in 1905.
I'm not certain whether I believe it or not, but there are times when I have to close up at night and I go out the west door. I'll be honest with you, even at 67 years old, I don't look back.
Not all people are believers. Dean of the diocese, Jeffrey Hall, doesn't buy into the story of the ghost.
The world is a lot bigger than what I know, and there's always a possibility that there's something that I don't. But I haven't ever seen anything that would lead me to believe conclusively that I've experienced a ghost. I think quite often our minds play tricks on us, and we try to find explanations for things that we can't explain.
Whether you believe the story or not, it's enough to give you chills. Maybe, if you're brave enough, you'll come down to the cathedral and see it for yourself. This is Tina Johnson for St. Thomas Journalism.
The fear of clowns has been rising since pranks went viral on the internet. The young people are still coming out and celebrating this year's Halloween with their best friends. Vincent Jang has the story.
Vampires, devils, and pickles. Tons of wild creatures have revived from the human flesh to celebrate Halloween 2016. This is the times of superstition. In the Halloween tradition, people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off roaming ghosts. The tradition seems changed from the past, and people have new ways to celebrate this festival. Although Halloween was on Monday, a lot of young people have decided to celebrate on the weekend. Dylan has something to say.
Personally, myself, I have too many exams later in the week, next week, to actually celebrate then. So if I celebrate Monday, I'm going to lose a lot of time studying. Before I came to university, it was something that we'd go and collect candy before, but now it's kind of like a social thing. So as it stands now, we usually drink, go out, have a good time for Halloween.
The infamous clown has always been a popular choice of a costume, but in this year, you won't see many clowns on the street. Julia thinks there are reasons behind the missing of the clown.
I think it's because they don't want to get hurt by people thinking they're clowns that want to hurt other people.
The caveman says he's not a big fan of the clown.
I am a little, but if I seen one, I'd probably stop and I'd be like, what are you doing, man?
Like, why are you afraid of clowns?
I'm not really afraid of them, but I mean, if I saw one, I'd be like, what the frig are you doing, man? Like, grow up, you know? You know what I mean? What are you doing? Like, get off the side of the road.
The weather may be cold in this weekend, but people are still passionate about this year's Halloween and dressing up to celebrate with fears and cheers. This is Vincent Jane reporting for St. Thomas Journalism.
Well, that wraps up this week's Basement Files. If you miss a newscast, you can always find it on our website. Thanks for watching. For Stu Journalism, I'm Sarah Betts. We'll see you right back here in 2 weeks.